Switzerland. We are combating human trafficking in Switzerland, and we have a special occasion because it's our team here, Marianne sitting next to me and Jenny also presenting. We will be able to talk to you about our organization and what we do. So I'm going to start my presentation. And as you may know, Switzerland ranked last in 2023 Global Slavery Index with the lowest prevalence of modern slavery. We have an estimated 0.5 slaves per 1,000 residents. Despite this, we are still estimated to have around 4,000 modern slaves, and we were criticized among other wealthy countries for taking limited action despite having such substantial resources available. And that's why we are striving to make a change for the victims that are suffering under difficult circumstances. We do have, if you see our statistics, we do have some of cases. It is difficult because there is, if you see here, these are the crime situations, and there are totally only 204. But then the real, people who are really, the cases are only 29. If you look at the people who really think they are victims of trafficking, we have more, but these people were not able to say something, or were not able to come and go against their traffickers or their perpetrators. 373 in total. So who are we? Act 212 is an acronym for activate, cooperate, and take action. And 212 means that every 2nd December, the United Nations commemorates the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery, and that's why we chose this name. We are a consulting and training center against human trafficking and a non-governmental association in the city of Bern, Switzerland, and our goal is to identify victims of human trafficking or sexual exploitation, to guarantee a comprehensive protection for victims, and achieve an effective punishment for perpetrators. As you may know, victims are not always looking how you think they are. Sometimes people, they still have pictures in mind and think they have to be in chains, they have to be beaten up, and that's not the case. Sometimes the chains are just in the heads. And that's why you cannot really tell if somebody is trafficked or not. They would not just show. It's a detective crime, and you really have to go investigating, and you have to see the signs. In Switzerland, they started this national action plan to combat human trafficking, where they put points together that are important. So we are really doing and trying to fight it with indicators where you can check off if you have a victim of human trafficking in front of you. Our Swiss Criminal Code, Article 182, is practically determining or using the 3 constituent points of human trafficking, which are the act, somebody who's recruiting or transporting, transferring, and the method in form of a threat, forced, coerced, or abducted, and that with the aim to exploit the person. That in all is human trafficking, with a purpose of prostitution or sexual exploitation, forced labor, slavery, or removal of organs, which we didn't have any cases yet in Switzerland. When you have a child, then the method is not, it's still trafficked even if the method is not, it's not forced or it's not coerced. You will have a victim of trafficking if it's recruited for an exploitative purpose. That's why we founded, or our founder founded, the National Hotline Against Human Trafficking and Sexual Exploitation, because the victims are scared. They need a low barrier point of contact, one number where they can call in and report from the public or even directly affected victims, and they can connect with local support services or with authorities. It's very important to have one number because of our federal system. In every canton or state, the regulations are quite different. So we can directly offer them to the right state, to the right service. And it's also very pertinent because sometimes victims are moved around. They go from one state to another, and it's going to be different anywhere. So if they have the courage to come out in another canton, it's going to be very difficult to give. These cantons will say, well, that's not in our authority. We can't do anything. So we have to refer them to the right state where they have been exploited. Since 2015, we had 799 suspicious activity reports with about 935 victims. And it's very important to say also that these are suspicious activity reports and not confirmed cases. We get calls on our hotline, which is anonymous. You can call in anonymously or write an online report, which is anonymous too, if you want, or just by email or phone calls. Our offer and limits are kind of like balancing out. It's a low barrier initial consultation and networking, and yet not a long-term advice and support. But what is exceptional about us is the networking with the specialized existing support and the cantonal police departments. Also, if sometimes we get reports that are kind of like unclear, it's also good that we get it so we can take care of it and don't have to bother victim service centers who are really able, or so they are really able to be concerned or to care for their victims and do the work right. Last year, we had a number of 113 people calling in from different countries. You can see it's all in German, but you can see where they came from. And of these 113, we had the 5 most frequently reported forms of exploitation. As you see that it's not only sexual exploitation, but the biggest part is sexual exploitation. We had exploitation of their labor, that is also quite high, and some that we don't really know, that are not clear and defined, but in some sort of exploitation or need or pain. And then we have this lover boy method, where Marianne will talk to you about afterwards, and sexual harassment, that we have some of them. We have also begging in Switzerland, which is not very well known, but there are some organizations behind it, and the beggars, when they're forced, they can beg, but if they're forced, they have to give back a lot of their earnings. So what can Swiss people do? What we ask them to is to not look away, because there are human lives at stake, to listen to their gut feelings, because sometimes I tell that to you, if you come upon a situation like human trafficking, you observe it, but also the people here, you may be the only chance for the person that is who is concerned. And if people have questions, they should contact specialist agency, the police, or they can call us at our number 08 40 12 212, or file an anonymous online form. We also ask people to order business cards of the national hotline, which they can give away, and if they have a kind of a suspicion, and they can give to the people, so they could call in if they are in need, and if they sometimes also want to talk. Thank you very much for your attention, and I am looking forward to hear what Jenny is going to say about labor exploitation now. And I'm stopping my presentation.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for this very insightful thoughts. And I will start sharing. Can you see?
Not the presentation yet.
Yes, there we go. Okay. A very warm welcome from my side, distinguished course attendees. Human trafficking and labor exploitation are grave violations of human rights that affect every country around the world. And today I will focus on Switzerland in the context of labor exploitation. While Switzerland may be known for its very high standards of living and strong labor protections, it is not immune to the exploitation of vulnerable workers, particularly migrants. As an international community today, it is critical that we understand the extent of the problem. Let me begin briefly by defining labor exploitation. Labor exploitation is one form of trafficking, and it occurs when workers are subjected to abusive conditions, such as forced labor or withheld wages, excessive working hours, often under threats or manipulation. In Switzerland, labor exploitation refers to situations where workers are subjected to unfair or abusive working conditions that violate the Swiss labor laws and the international standards. And you can see that can include different things. Like, for example, wage theft. Workers can be paid less than the legal minimum wage, or not receiving payment for overtime, holidays, or other legally mandated benefits. Excessive working hours, requiring employees to work beyond the legal minimum or limits for hours, or adequate rest of time. Then the third one is unsafe working conditions, failure to provide a safe working environment, and the coercion or threats, using intimidation, threats to prevent workers from leaving or reporting abuse, and exploitation also of migrant workers, like vulnerable groups, maybe not, or maybe more at risk due to the dependence on the employees, maybe also the dependence for residency, and their unfamiliarity with the Swiss labor laws. That makes it more difficult. Switzerland is a destination and a transit country for human trafficking, particularly for labor exploitation. And according to recent 100 cases of human trafficking investigated each year, and this is likely only the tip of the iceberg, as many cases go unreported. In Switzerland, the construction sector, agriculture, hospitality, and domestic work sectors are particularly prone to exploitation. Migrants, especially those from the non-EU countries, asylum seekers, and temporary foreign workers are most vulnerable to exploitation due to limited job security or maybe language barriers, and in some cases, irregular immigration statuses. What are some challenges in the labor exploitation? Switzerland has several legal frameworks in place to address human trafficking and also labor exploitation. On one side, there is the Swiss Penal Code that criminalizes human trafficking, and then there's also the Swiss labor laws, which set strict guidelines for wages, working hours, and conditions. However, enforcing these laws remain a challenge. Here are some barriers which we can see. Underreporting. Many victims do not come forward to the fear of deportation or lack of awareness. That's a big problem about their rights or threats from traffickers. And even worse, most victims don't see themselves as victims or realize that they are exploited. And here I also have to mention the perception of exploitation, which is very difficult, because in Switzerland, labor exploitation can be particularly complex due to the country's high standard of living and also the reputation of strong labor rights. So many workers, especially those in vulnerable sectors such as agriculture, hospitality, or whatever, they may not even recognize themselves as victims of exploitation. This is often because they're still earning more money or more higher wages than they would in their home countries or other regions. And even if their wages fall below the Swiss minimum wage or industry standards. So that is a big problem to address. Hidden exploitation. It is often hidden, especially in sectors like domestic work, where workers are isolated in private households, and then also the complexity of cases. Trafficking networks often span across multiple countries, as you may know, and that makes investigation and prosecution complicated. Victims are often moved frequently, making it harder for the authorities to identify and assist them. And not all Swiss citizens are aware of the extent of human trafficking, which makes it an easy place for offenders to become active. Then we have some challenges with the subcontractors. Labor exploitation to subcontracting in Switzerland is a growing concern, especially in sectors like construction or cleaning services, logistics, agriculture, because subcontracting is often used to complete projects more cost effectively by having these resources outsourced, but it has some challenges which it brings with it. The first one is lack of transparency and accountability. When subcontractors are used, the chain of responsibilities for working conditions become unclear, obviously. The main contractor may claim that the responsibility for fair wages is with the subcontractor. So This allows sometimes that there is wage undercutting or failure to pay social security contributions, which is a big problem, right? Then the second one is wage and labor rights violations. Subcontractors often rely on cheaper labor, typically migrant workers or temporary employees who may be unaware of their rights in Switzerland, or these workers frequently face precarious conditions, including underpayment, like, maybe not in their country, as I mentioned before, but in the Swiss, like far below the Swiss standard. Excessive working hours without proper compensation for breaks or holidays, and also the lack of social protections such as pension contributions or health insurance. And the third one is legal uncertainty for workers. Many workers employed by subcontractors operate in a legal gray area. Since they are often employed on a short-term or temporary basis, they face greater challenges in asserting their rights. Additionally, there is often a dependency on the employer for work or residency permits, making it difficult for workers to report abuse. And the fourth coming up is challenges for monitoring by authorities. This is really hard because it's complex and it's hard for them to monitor it. The subcontractors can quickly dissolve also or declare bankruptcy, making it difficult for workers to claim unpaid wages or compensation. And the fifth one is unfair competition. The main contractors who work with subcontractors can lower costs by employing cheaper labor, which distorts competition and puts pressure on other companies to also use subcontracting. And this can lead to a downward spiral in wages and working conditions. These are the activity reports received from our national hotlines, where you can see how many reports. There are 77 reports with 115 affected people. And on the left line, you can see the number of cases in which area and the number of victims. And the most high is really hospitality. And then the second one is construction. And we have a growing concern also for nail studios in Switzerland, where they're hiring people from other countries and then trying to offer nail services at a very low number. And so that's a growing concern where we received phone calls. I would like to share with you two suspicious activity reports which we received. One was in May from a fast food chain where a young woman was sharing about her co-workers. Her co-workers, she found out that they had no contract at the beginning, or they had to work long hours until 2 p.m. and then start at 8 a.m. at another food or one of their chains, which had like excessive working hours. They're really tired. The deductions were not correct. And for the first 3 months, as I said, they had almost low or no share, and they had to share the room with other people. So there were a lot of suspicious factors, which we then forwarded. Another activity report received in December was about the Cleaning Institute, who reported to us. They have cleaned the conference center several times and were just also observed suspicious things, but did not come forward. The reason why they reported is that they hired a new lady, and they found out that this new lady also was working at this conference center, and so they could get some more information, which then actually confirmed their thoughts. And here's what they had to go through. Like, the employees had to work a lot of hours. The first 3 months, they had little or no salary. They have to have their rooms at the hotel. This conference center was a hotel at the same time. And so they had no choice to maybe have their room somewhere else. They have partly no residence permit or no working permit. They did not speak the language. So enough suspicious reasons which could really go confirm this labor exploitation. So that was something. 2 activities report I wanted to share. What are initiatives or measures? So one is the national hotline, which my colleague Natalie already mentioned. But this hotline will try really to have the cases come forward, at least, that people, the whole community of Switzerland, all habitants, are walking through Switzerland with open eyes, because I think it needs all of us to really fight against human trafficking. Another thing in the labor exploitation, what we do is with SECO, that's the Secretariat of Economic Affairs, we do trainings for labor inspectors. And we'll try to do this in different sectors of Switzerland, and so bring awareness and trainings to these sectors, because they also go and check, and so they might be able to find more cases. We also do other trainings for professionals in the public, like police officers, or the general public. We do have different trainings. This is from my part, from the labor exploitation. I do thank you very much. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to bring them forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. You just had you have a training in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. We went to a hospital, and we did a training for them to realize if the victims come forward, because, as you mentioned, victims don't look like victims all the time, so that they can find and be trained on what they can look at, so that they can actually realize it might be a case of human trafficking. Yes.
Yeah, that is so important, because they are kind of like first responders, right? So thank you. So we will hear about the Loverboy methods, sexual exploitation, from Marianne. And I will give you the floor. Mm-hmm. Do you have the presentation? Yeah, and we will put up the presentation with another welcome.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marianne, and I will be your conference speaker for this presentation. I'm a co-worker from Jenny and also from Natalie, and I will talk to you today about the Loverboy method. I will show you an overview of this presentation. You can have a look at it. I don't have to read it. But I will say something about these 8 or 7 points. Of course, the definition, the situation in Switzerland, the case studies, the recommendations, and the conclusions. This is not. Why the lover boy method is so important? It's an insidious form of manipulation. And although the term is often associated with romantic relationships, it actually masks a brutal exploitation. These are a few pictures. It looks very, very easily and easygoing, but most of the time, in a few weeks or months, and there are also cases of a few days, the perpetrator will change his behavior and will force the victim to do things she doesn't want to. What is the lover boy method? The lover boy girl or boy or girl method is based on emotional exploitation. A recruiter, often a man, seduces and gains the trust of young women or men, even teenagers, or maybe some younger, we don't know for sure, by promising them a stable love relationship or a better future. Gradually, these women or men are manipulated and find themselves trapped in situations of forced prostitution or other forms of sexual exploitation. The tactics used: seduction and emotional manipulation. The recruiter makes you believe in a sincere relationship by offering affection and gifts in the beginning. The second is isolation. The victim is gradually cut off from friends and families and becomes dependent on the recruiter for emotional and financial support. Forced indebtedness. The lover boy or girl creates vicious debts, so as gifts, travel, lodging, helping her family, and forces the victim into prostitution to pay them off. Psychological and physical abuse. Emotional manipulation is often accompanied by violence to maintain the recruiter dominance, like gaslighting, for example. And gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which victims are deliberately disorientated and destabilized, and their perception of reality and themselves is gradually altered. Psychological effects. Victims develop an emotional dependency on their abuser. That's also the goal from the abuser, making it difficult for them to recognize that they are being exploited. Confusion, shame, and sometimes attachment prevent them from seeking help. Trauma psychologists explain that the human need to belong is so vital that when there's only one connection left, in our example, lover boys or girls, victims will do anything to protect that connection, even if it's harmful to them. Profile of the victims. Victims are often young women or men or teenagers looking for love, acceptance, or a better economic situation. Recruiters target those who are emotional or family vulnerable, sometimes even from affluent homes, as they are easier to manipulate. Also via the internet, even though it's a more hidden area. We're not exactly knowing how many are victims via the internet. Vulnerable boys and girls are extorted with, for example, nude photos. The profile of the perpetrators. Perpetrators of the lover boy girl method are emotional pimping share certain characteristics often related to the dynamics of manipulation and control. This profile can vary, but the following points are often observed. Charisma and strong interpersonal skills. These are charismatic, manipulative people who know how to establish a relationship of trust and emotional attachment with their victims. They know how to be attentive, protective, and affectionate at the beginning of the relationships. What's very important. Ability to identify vulnerabilities. These individuals are quick to identify emotional, social, or economic weaknesses in their targets. They often prey on young people looking for affection, attention, or a protective figure, or those who are socially vulnerable. They often have a history of crime or violence, although not systematic lover boys often have criminal backgrounds, drug dealing, theft, and violence, or have been involved in trafficking or pimping networks. Another point is greed. The primary motivation is often financial gain. These individuals see victims as a source of income and manipulate them as a means of gaining total control over them. Because the economic background is often low and there are few social prospects available. The psychological and physical pressure, these individuals often alternate between soft and violent behavior, creating a climate of instability to keep the victims under their control. Psychological manipulation may include jealousy, devaluation, and isolation from those around them. And the sixth point is group or criminal influence. In some cases, lover boys are part of a larger trafficking network where they receive support and direction from accomplices or other criminals. Also, we see a low education level, early school leaving, and limited future prospects, and problematic family background, and often one-parent families. Situation in Switzerland. In Switzerland, the lover boy method has its own specific characteristics due to the legal, social, and geographical context of the country. The legal framework in Switzerland, human trafficking and pimping are punished crimes, but the lover boy method remains difficult to identify and prosecute. Lover boys often operate in a gray area, exploiting an emotional relationship to exert control. Proving psychological manipulation is challenging because victims may not recognize that they are under the influence or may be unwilling to break the bond that binds them to the lover boy, making it difficult to gather tangible evidence. The international population and mobility. There's a high mobility in border areas with fast connections to neighboring countries like France, Germany, Austria, Liechtenstein, and Italy. Facilitates the movement of victims from one country to another, making detection and prevention even more complex. Another point that Natalie already mentioned is the different states and the different legal systems in the states. So in Switzerland, the judiciary and police are organized at the cantonal level, 26 states actually, which can pose challenges in cases of trafficking that cross cantonal borders. Some cantons are better equipped than others to identify and prosecute lover boy cases, leading the disputes in the fight against this phenomenon. The strategies to infiltrate social networks. Lover boys in Switzerland often use social networks to find and approach their victims. A phenomenon facilitated by the high level of internet use among young people. Also manipulated with faking nude photos. There's actually quite a new phenomenon with Muslim girls that perpetrators are manipulating photos, and the girl is then also isolated and forced to have sex with several men. She will do this out of fear and shame for her family and the fear for honor killing. The risk of suicide is extremely high in this group, and suicide is the most horrible ending of a horrible situation, and will also means that the real reason may never be known in this group. Then we have the cultural and of confidential and difficulty of detection. In Switzerland, the culture of confidentiality and discretion means that victims may be reluctant to report their situation for fear of stigmatization or mistrust of the authorities. In addition, the lack of awareness of the lover boy method makes certain signs difficult to recognize, even by social or educational professionals. Since 2015, we had more than 70 reports and of suspected victimization caused by a lover boy or girl. The first criminal conviction was in 2022. We have some case studies, and for example, in this case, handled by Act 212, we call her Mia. She's a 16-year-old girl and was approached online by a man who first became her friend and then her boyfriend. He then isolated her, manipulated her, and eventually got her to prostitute herself for him. The money earned was paid to the boyfriend, who had total control of the girl. She was sold on internet sites as an underage girl. After the death of the girl's mother and the boyfriend's total lack of empathy, he didn't care at all, she started looking for help online and fortunately came across our website. We were then able to support her and help her. Earlier this year, her ex-boyfriend's 10.5-year prison sentence was upheld by an appeals court in a German-speaking canton of Switzerland. It took nearly 5 years for the case to reach a positive conclusion. The young woman is now in education and working in the social sector. She's rebuilding her life day by day. This case shows how destructive the lover boy-girl method can be and how difficult it is to recognize and get out of such a situation. In this case, it took a dramatic event for the girl to start questioning the relationship. No one around her knew about the lover boy method. That's why it's so important to raise awareness. And that's why we are trying to identification of potential victims, interprofessional cooperation, and victim-centered approach. It's crucial that professionals, especially those in the social services, schools, and police, know how to recognize warning signs. For example, young girls or boys who suddenly isolate themselves from their families, change their behavior, or show signs of emotional distress may be in the grip of a lover boy or girl. That can be poor school results, failing school, very tired, stomach ache, doctor's visit, the phone they will keep to themselves, changing of the behavior is a very important sign. A coordinated approach is essential. School social workers, law enforcement, and NGOs must share information and work together to identify and protect victims. Quick action can make all the difference. And then victim-centered approach is very important. The victims must be treated with sensitivity. They are often in shock or in denial. It's important to create an environment where they feel safe and heard. The lover boy method is a pernicious form of sexual exploitation based on emotional manipulation. In Switzerland, this phenomenon is on the rise, and it's imperative that professionals are trained to recognize these signs and act quickly. In Switzerland, several initiatives have been launched to combat the lover boy method. These include prevention campaigns in schools to make young people aware of the danger of this method. Workshops and information sessions are organized to teach young girls how to recognize manipulative behavior. Then I have, the role of the NGOs in particular, Act 212. Act 212 plays a key role in identifying victims through its national anonymous hotline, where witnesses can anonymously report cases of exploitation, or possible cases, of course. We also work closely with law enforcement and social services to identify and protect victims of trafficking. And that brings me to the call to action. I encourage each and every one of you to deepen your knowledge of this issue. Raise awareness among young people in your communities and support organizations that fight human trafficking. Together, we can help protect the most vulnerable. On this page, you will find a link to our website and a report about lover boys in Switzerland. And that's actually the last slide of my presentation. I wish you a very nice day or evening, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I changed the room. And, can you turn off the presentation? Do you know?
Even kijken.
Jenny, you can't, I think. I don't think I can.
No, I cannot do it.
Okay, I'll just go quickly. I'll come here. I was afraid that I couldn't see.
Wait, you can put it.
I couldn't see. Here, that's. Close the door. Yes. Okay. Now we're here again. What would you think, Jenny and Marianne, would you think is the most important thing that Switzerland... Oh, I'm on.
Oh.
What would you think is the most important thing that we could do in Switzerland to combat trafficking?
I guess that's a big question, which is not so easy to answer, but there are several factors what we can obviously do. I think one is networking together. The stronger we know each other, the not stronger or the faster we are in combating it. And I think another important branch is to really also educate not only like people in that sector, but also the whole community in Switzerland and all people who could be involved, like, for example, the medical industry, who are maybe not directly working in human trafficking, but could potentially also help that potential people come forward. Or, yeah. So I think those are two things which are important.
Yeah. Because I think there are many people, like Western people, like nations watching, but also other nations. And yeah, and so it's good to tell that, or like to get to know what we can do. And if some of the attendees have any questions, you can put them in the chat and ask questions about what we've been talking or what we do in Switzerland. And while waiting for it, I'm asking Marianne also about, you were talking about the Muslim girls. Is that something you experienced in Switzerland, or is that something you have special sources?
Yeah, I do have sources. I do have some sources in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, we now see that there is a big problem with Muslim girls. I also know one case in Switzerland that's still actually on with a Muslim girl. So the problem with Muslim girls is also the shame. It's not the shame like the shame from other girls. Of course, there's a lot of shame, but there's a bigger problem behind it, because of the shame of the family and the fear of being killed while having sex before you are even married. So there's a big dark side of this problem, and actually we are not aware, we are not knowing in the moment how big the problem is. Yeah.
Is there anything that maybe you want to emphasize now at the end, now that you said everything and you remembered, something that I wanted to mention and I didn't mention, or just emphasize it, just for some people just watch the end?
I think I said everything. I think the subject of the Muslim girls is for me personally very, very important, because I can imagine how big the problem is, but it's not nobody's coming out because of fear.
It's going to be very hidden.
Yeah.
Yes. And you mentioned something about AI too.
Yeah.
We had some presentations in this conference, or where you can watch and hear how people progress, how they can use actually AI, which is very interesting, or how it's used from perpetrators and how to be careful with it. And I just recommend you to watch these sessions. Yeah, Jenny, did you want to mention something?
No, I think just to wrap up is really I mean, it's also important. We have different branches, but the labor exploitation I was talking about, it's important also to address in Switzerland, as we see, because we have such a high standard of living, and I think because of that, we're maybe it's unknown, or we're unaware, or people around the world are unaware that this is quite a big issue, because there is a lot of money flowing, and it's secretly. So I think we need to work together. We need to raise awareness about this issue. So I'm glad we could have this session today to maybe bring a little light into this, and maybe, I mean, if this is already a big issue in Switzerland, it is also in different other countries in the world. So I would be really wondering, maybe somebody from the attendees who can share a little thoughts of their country or what's going on. Or we shared also our email addresses. Don't hesitate to also contact us afterwards if you want to network with us, or maybe also even just bring forward some questions or some thoughts or whatever. I'll be really happy for that.
Yeah, very well. What we experienced with the national hotline that I mentioned before, I just think it's crucial to have something like a low barrier method, how people can come in and ask questions, or even say something before they go to the police, before they go to a victim service center. And that's why also we sometimes detect not cases, but like reports or situations like that are not yet a thing or not very pertinent. As we see that many people are very lonely, and they get into these romance scams and people where there is a method, and it's called the pig butchering method, that I just quickly want to share in Asia, where it's actually a double exploitation. And people are exploited there to make calls to romance people in the West, and to ask a lot of money from them, and to just kind of like take advantage of their loneliness. And so also for us to be aware, if we are contacted, that we can just forward it to services or police stations, so we can just that we can be on the lookout. And also, if we know of people, then just be kind to each other and just we want to stay together. We want to collaborate with authorities and service centers, and we want to collaborate with the regular people, and give them the chance to come forward and to tell us what they see.
Yeah, one thought which crossed my mind also now is, I think it's really helpful that the hotline can also be addressed anonymously. I think that's a big point, which I don't know other countries do have that or not, because like the case I shared, where this cleaning company was addressing us to report suspicious activity from another conference center which they visited. I think, as he mentioned, he came forward anonymous. It was really important that it stays anonymous, so that they're working or their company is out, but they can report. And I think that's why I think this is so important to have something in between, because I think this case would have never been come forward, because he would have never gone to the police, not to protect himself and his company. So I do think this is a big gain if it can be made anonymously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. While I think that there's human trafficking, much bigger issues in some other parts of the world, I think it's crucial that we are here and do something against it, and try to find niches where actually cases can be detected. So yeah, thank you very much. I think there are no questions. And as Jenny said, you can always contact us and ask. And thank you for your presentation, Jenny, Marianne. And we just wish you a very great session with the OC24. And thank you. It was an honor to participate and be part of it.
Thank you very much.